And God said, "Let there be
The
light."
Lord says, "Let my people go."
I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
This is the Talkin' Bible podcast.
Hello, folks. Welcome back to Talkin' Bible with Rohan Bell. That's me. And Amanda Bartley. That's you.
Hello. Thank you for having me again.
Good to be back. And we are talking about Jesus casting demons out of boys today. Jesus heals a demon-possessed boy. Matthew, Mark, and Luke. This same story is in three different Gospels.
Yes. So I guess, first of all, it's a seizure. He's having seizures.
He's having some kind of seizure, it would appear, isn't it?
Yeah. So I guess he's having seizures. He's suffering terribly. They're saying that the demon is causing the seizures. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is
That's
that right?
certainly the belief at the time. Yep.
Yep. I mean, it's really quick. There's only 6 verses in this one. So, there's not much in it.
Let's read one then. So Jesus comes down off the mountain. This is Matthew 17:14-20. And they're slightly different versions, but largely the same story. A large crowd was waiting for them, and a man who knelt before Jesus and said, "Lord, have mercy on my son. He has seizures and suffers terribly. He often falls into the fire or into water. So I brought him to your disciples, but they couldn't heal him." And Jesus said, "You faithless and corrupt people, how long must I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me." Then Jesus rebuked the demon in the boy, and it left him. And from that moment on, the boy was well. Afterward, the disciples asked privately, "Why couldn't we cast out the demon?" And he said, "You don't have enough faith." Jesus said, "I tell you the truth, if you have faith even as small as a mustard seed, you can say to the mountain, move from here to there, and nothing will be impossible for you." We should just reference that a couple of other things happen in different versions of the story. So in Mark's version, it says that that the demon shrieked and left them. And then they say, "Why couldn't we drive it out?" The disciples, and Jesus says, "This kind can come out only by prayer."
Yeah, that's
one of your questions.
Yeah, well, it's one of my points.
One of your points. Seems like a slight difference.
The only time he says that, though. The other two don't say that. Luke doesn't say that.
No,
it's
and
just this one.
if I'm correct, one of the versions says something about fasting as well.
Does it?
Jesus said,
like in a different
it might be in a different
translation.
version or a different
translation.
Right. I think it might be one of those ones where it
prayer
says
and fasting.
something like that. And I think it might be one of those where it says earliest manuscripts do not have the word fasting, but somewhere along the line it became a part of the practice.
Yeah.
So I can't remember without looking that up exactly where that is.
I'd love to know where that came from and if there's anything to support that. And if we could, can we take that as we need, like, this needs to be done by prayer?
Okay. Well, yes. I think the point is even if it says
and fasting. I mean,
even if it says that, usually when you see these ones where it says, I'm just going to look it up now, where these ones where it says earliest manuscripts cannot do it. While it's worth noting that while it might not be in the original text, the fact that it was written and added in later on is a sign that at least at the time it was written, which might have been 100 years later or a couple hundred years later when they were translating the text, that was a part of the common practice of the time. So by the time you get to the 2nd century, they're used to it.
Yep,
so yes,
right.
It says here, it's Mark 9:29. It says, Jesus replied, this kind can be cast out only by prayer, but it says some manuscripts read by prayer and fasting. Okay, so there is a link there. At least at the time the manuscripts were written, there was a belief that fasting was a necessary discipline in order to be able to do kingdom stuff like heal people and see demons cast out and so on.
Yeah. Do you think it's interesting that Luke's doesn't really talk about that, anything like that at all at the end? It just says all gripped the people.
Yeah.
But I guess Luke's account was really much later and he's grabbing stories from everyone, isn't he? He wasn't there. It's not his.
Yes and no. I mean, this is a conversation a lot of people have. General consensus is that Matthew and Luke probably used Mark as their template, but also too that Mark, there's another source called source Q, the letter Q, and it's lost, but there seems to be another source that Matthew and Luke, and probably even Mark, if I'm right, I'll have to wait till after I do my master's to the New Testament in a couple of months' time to remember. But this source Q was probably the source that the other gospel writers drew on that was circulating around, because there's evidence that there is common links between Matthew and Luke that aren't in Mark. I think that's how it works. So the answer to your question, I think the simplest answer for why maybe Luke didn't focus on the whole demon thing as much is that Matthew and Mark were writing more to Jewish audiences. They would have expected more of a Jewish audience, where the Gentile audience that Luke was writing to, it probably wasn't as important. Demonic possession was very much a Jewish. At the time of Jesus, it was a very common thing. All sorts of rabbis were going around casting demons out of people. It was a very common Jewish practice at the time.
Yeah.
Not that there wasn't the sense of evil taking over people among the pagan religions, but it was very much a Jewish thing.
Yeah, right. Okay. Why do you think it's important to take note of Jesus getting frustrated with them? I have an answer.
Okay.
But yeah.
Where he says, "How long must I put up with you?" Well, I'm not even sure I know who he's frustrated with. It reads like he's frustrated with the disciples for not being able to cast a demon out. That seems to be what he's frustrated with. But it seems out of character for Jesus to...
He actually calls them corrupt.
Yes, that's right. He says corruption, corrupt generation.
Really impatient.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, that's right. That's what I mean. It's hard to think he's talking about his disciples that way. It's more like yesterday's chapter where we were just talking about him getting frustrated with people who were rebuking him. And now we're talking about Jesus seeming to call his disciples corrupt and faithless. I don't know.
I also
Tell
think...
me what your answer is.
Well, if you look at the portion of Scripture beforehand... It says he gathered them together and gave them the authority.
Okay.
He actually said,
okay.
I'm going to gather you together and I'm going to give you the authority.
So his
and then he goes to do it and he's like, guys, I just gave you the authority.
That makes sense.
I've just handed you the answer to my question. To your question, and you're asking the question again. It's like...
That I can identify with.
Like a teacher has handed you, here's the answers to the test, guys.
Yeah.
There it is. You have an open book test, but somehow you still got everything wrong.
Yes. Okay. Well, I can identify with that. One of my biggest challenges, but I put it down to my non-Christian, my flesh responding, is I don't do well when I try to give a person an answer or try to give a person the solution and they don't take it and then they come back to me and say, it's not working. And I go, have you tried what I said?
Yeah.
And they say no. Or they have all kinds of excuses. Oh, I've tried that, it won't work. I go, well, I got nothing else to offer you. So, but in my flesh, I get frustrated.
Yeah.
But there probably is a little bit of that in Jesus.
Jesus was a man too,
but I don't think it's a sinful response like it can be in me. Maybe I'm being too hard on myself. Maybe there's a little bit of, I need to be a little bit more like Jesus and go, well, look, I'm not going to waste any more time on this. I told you what to do. If you actually go and apply this to your life, maybe it'll work, So I can be, maybe I need to get a bit harsher. I tend to blame myself if I feel that way. But no, you're right. Maybe that's it. Jesus is just giving them the authority and then not fully experiencing what he's given them.
There's more. There's more.
Okay, tell me more.
So the day before, the transfiguration just happened.
Right. That's just up on the mountain.
So even though only a couple of them went up, they could. I think it says that they could all see what was going on.
No, only Peter, James, and John, only up on the mountain.
So they could only see them. Okay, right.
No one else knew what was happening.
But surely they came back and told them, right?
Yeah, well, it seems like the story seems to indicate this is the first thing that happens when they come down off the mountain. Although you don't really know because Jesus did warn them on the way down the mountain, don't tell anyone what you've seen here. And actually, no, some of the versions say, but they kept it to themselves until after his resurrection.
Right.
So, no, I don't think anyone's known what's transpired on the mountain.
Right.
No.
So...
Does that mess up with your theory?
No.
Except Peter, James, and John.
Yeah, except for Peter, James, and John. So... I just wrote here, do you think the transfiguration that happened the day before had anything to do with them not feeling worthy? Think about it. They've literally just seen the most amazing thing happen. Like, if you haven't read the transfiguration story, go back and have a quick read. It's not that long, but basically he turns this white golden glow.
Yeah.
It's like something out of a sci-fi movie, and God's voice booms out of the clouds and says, "This is my son, listen to him."
Yeah, exactly.
So one, he could be frustrated because he knows that 3 of them have been told by God, a booming voice. They've literally heard
Bear in
the
mind,
audible
though,
voice of God.
Just to look at some structure here, though. It says, at the foot of the mountain, this is why it's good to read it in that context.
Yeah.
At the foot of the mountain, a large crowd was waiting for them. Who's the them?
Yeah.
Jesus, Peter, James, and John.
Yeah.
A man knelt before Jesus and said, Lord, have mercy on my son.
It's the other disciples
It's
that
not
were left
Peter,
behind.
James, and John. Yeah, it's the ones. It's the rest of them. Peter, James, and John haven't seen it yet.
Thank you.
Mind you, that would, if I'm Peter, James, and John, it'd be very easy after what I've just seen on the mountain to be full of pride and go, "You stupid! If you knew what we saw on the mountain, you wouldn't have this problem. You know, you would have cast these. So that would have potentially fed some cynicism in them. They would have been guilty of a different kind of sin.
Yeah.
But there's a sense definitely.
No, the Transfiguration's the day before. Oh.
No, well, presumably the night before, and they've just come off the mountain the next morning.
Okay,
that's the way it reads.
There you go.
All Gospels say when they returned to the other disciples, they saw the crowd. So they've come down off the mountain. They've had a conversation with Jesus, and this is the very next thing that's happened is this boy who's having seizures comes before Jesus. Yeah.
Oh, this poor little boy.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, my heart breaks for him.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, it's like, look, he's healed.
Yeah, Jesus did a miracle.
Yeah, it's pretty and like this crowd, this large crowd has all seen this miracle.
Yep, that's right.
Right after the Transfiguration story.
Yep.
So it's pretty cool. Cool.
One thing I do love about the story that Mark's gospel picks up on is the heart of the Father. It's a classic pattern of faith here. He says, Jesus, there's a bit more elaboration in Mark's gospel. How long has this been happening? Well, since he was a boy. He often gets thrown into the fire, etc.
Yeah.
And he says, I've been trying everything. He says, Jesus, if you can do anything, please do it.
Yeah.
And Jesus responds, says, what do you mean, if I can? You know, he can put your spin on that everywhere. If I can? If I can? I remember the old Don Francisco song. It says, if you can do anything. He says, if I can, he pondered, you ask me if I can. Everything is possible if there's faith inside a man. And I think Jesus is trying to graciously say to this father, hey, this has got more to do with your faith than it's got to do with my ability. I can do anything.
Yeah.
What is your faith at? And I love the response of Jesus and the man, because the man doesn't have to then suddenly go, yes, you're right, Jesus, I repent. He goes, yeah, I want to believe. Help me overcome my unbelief.
I love that part.
I love that.
Help me overcome my unbelief.
So this is the acknowledgement that even the faith that we need to believe in miracles, to believe God is going to work in our life or in our kid, in this case, in our kids' lives that are going through tough times, like this father was, the father's heart here, he was able to access the gift of faith. He says, Lord, I want to believe, but I recognize that left to my own devices, I'm going to come up short, but please grant me your faith, because faith is a gift.
Yeah.
So Jesus responds to that kind of prayer. He doesn't necessarily, he's open with prayers that go, I want to believe, help me with my unbelief. This is hard right now, Lord. If I'm honest, I'm really finding it hard to believe you and trust you, because the circumstances I'm seeing seem to be the opposite, but I want to believe. That's often just enough for Jesus.
So it's interesting that it's mentioned in 3 Gospels, so Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and they're all a little bit different,
They
right?
are.
So Matthew talks about faith. The end of Mark says that it's through prayer.
Through prayer, yep.
And Luke, it talks about how they're all amazed and in awe and wonder of his glory and grace.
3 slightly different differences. Right? Yeah, different ends.
3 different ends, but 3 different things that are all equal. Well, maybe not equally, but all as important, right?
Yep.
So when we are praying about these sorts of things, about healing, when we're praying for healing, have faith. It is done through prayer and or fasting.
Yes.
And fasting, or maybe not fasting, question mark. Luke, where it says that they're all amazed, in awe and wonder, and still putting him on the throne. It's not us.
It's not us.
It's him.
Yeah.
You know, we might be voicing that prayer, we might be voicing that faith, but I didn't heal him.
No, that's right.
God did.
God did.
All awe and wonder, always, or humbleness.
Points to Jesus.
Point to Jesus, but through prayer and faith, having faith.
Yep, absolutely. And prayer is so important here. Like Jesus is saying, the way he seems to be saying it is, if you're wondering why you couldn't cast out that demon, why you couldn't see that miracle, why you couldn't get that breakthrough, maybe you're not prayed up, is what he's saying. This isn't just referring to, I don't think this is referring to a particular prayer at the time. I think this is talking to, especially if you link in fasting there, this is more a lifestyle of prayer. like a reservoir. He's saying if your life isn't a life of prayer and fasting, if your life isn't that way inclined, you're not going to be able to be in the right frame of mind.
Yeah.
Accessing the right power in the right way at the right time. So if you expect to be able to have what you need in the moment, but you're not prayed up, you don't have a lifestyle of prayer. It's rather, it's rather bigoted, or it's just making assumptions.
Like you can do it on your own.
We're devaluing God to think, oh yeah, I can do this whenever I want
because He's given me the power.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Could be that. Could be
I
right.
can have faith. I can
have
that. He's given me the power. He's filled me up, and that's great. Cool, awesome. He's just given me the authority. I don't need to do anything else now.
That's a pride or an arrogance, exactly. So you could link that with then leading to a disrespect of God. But a respect of God says, well, I'm going to respect you enough to spend a relationship with you, and then out of that relationship, I will have what I need. When the demon-possessed boy's in front of me, when the healing is needed, when the miracle is there, my life is prayed up, fasted up, ready to go. I think there's a dependence on God that comes with that lifestyle. And if we have that reservoir of dependence, then when we need God, it's going to be a lot easier to access him than if we have a reservoir of independence from God.
Yeah.
And then maybe that's part of what this story's about.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it seems to be a lot to do with trying to teach us about our response.
Yeah. Yes, okay, it's about the healing and it's pretty cool that he's done this.
Yes.
However, it's a teaching moment.
It's a teaching moment. It leaves us with a question.
I feel like it's always a teaching moment.
That's right. Totally. Yep, 100%.
Well, it is, right?
100%.
But, what can we learn from this? Because, it's not something I haven't prayed and tried to cast out a demon before.
Okay.
So I can't relate to that at all, but I can certainly relate to praying for healing.
Yeah, needing to see God move in your world.
Yeah. And not just physical healing, but, spiritual, emotional.
All of the
like
above.
you said, needing God in my world.
And in your family's world. And
yeah,
exactly. And the people we care and pastor, we need God. We can't just show up in people's worlds and expect them to arrogantly, disrespectfully expect God to move if we haven't put the work in to build a relationship with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Let's get busy about spending time in prayer, fasting, that word that I don't like, but I take on board. All right, that's enough for today. Unless there's anything you want to add?
Only this. I'll end with this because I'll talk about it more. So for you guys, it will be in I think it's probably
like 2 months.
2 months.
Yeah.
2 months. But there is
try and record something
another passage where Jesus talks about moving mountains. So in the Matthew passage just now, we've talked about how he says faith as small as a mustard seed can move a mountain. So much later on, he talks about moving mountains again.
Yep.
And
it's a common refrain that Jesus used.
Yeah, common. It is common. And I just, I actually ended up with these two weeks completely by fluke.
Both had mountain movers in them.
Yeah, and I just thought there's quite a lot of stuff that we've talked about in these passages that we're talking about in the July one. So it's the week of July 28th, I think.
Yeah, I think it is, yep.
And I just, I was excited about that.
That's good. That's often how it works.
Yeah.
A number of times this year I've sat down and go, I didn't plan that, but the topics have gone in the same direction.
Yeah, but I said it in my message a couple of weeks ago. Every single time I get given something to talk about or Jesus does a number on me. The Holy Spirit does a number on me, and I learn so much just by getting into the Word.
That should be how it is.
Don't just pray up, word up.
Yeah, word up. Word up is indeed the case. Yep.
Word up.
Word up, folks. I like it. Let's be worded up. You're preaching my language now. I like to word up. All right.
See you guys. See you tomorrow.
Talk to you tomorrow.